the mic will go there and then finding it. Yes. We have very little time.
Yeah.
We want to use
So
it.
now I request the audience, those who wish to ask the questions, they please come forward near the dais and ask the questions to the dignitaries on the dais. Yes, sir.
Is this okay? Can I ask? Sir, I am Professor Mahendra Reddy, Distinguished Advisor, ICFA University. It was an excellent lecture you delivered. It will take months to fully internalize and understand. As you know, the Indian universities are now in the process of implementation of the NEP 2020. As a part of it, as a 4-year undergraduate program across the country, we are introducing Indian knowledge systems, understanding India as a one compulsory course. Now, you have covered a wide variety of topics, hard sciences, life sciences, mind sciences, social sciences, etc. Can you help us identify, prioritize some of this, which we can include in our undergraduate curriculum so that our students get a better idea in the limited time for the Indian knowledge system? Thank you, sir.
So that's a very good question. It's a serious question that I would like to respond in writing. It's not something I can give in 2 minutes because you're talking about prioritizing of the all the Indian knowledge systems. Therefore, it will take a piece of work. So what you need to do is write to me. Is it a 1-semester course? Is it a 2-semester course? Is it a what? Okay, 1-semester course. How many lectures? And then I can give you my advice. If you write to me saying we need the outline, the topics of 1-semester course, so many lectures, I'll give you my input. If you write to me, thank you.
Honorable Rajiv Malhotra ji, it's an honor to stand in front of you. My question is, as young academicians, we people, how can we guide to combine academics and activism in national interest?
So first distinction between scholarship and activism. A whole lot of everybody thinks he's a scholar because he has opinions, but opinion and scholarship are not the same. So we need to produce, first of all, very good scholars, and then based on that scholarship, we need activists. Otherwise, the activists are just based on opinion and not scholarship. So the scholar has to, there are different kinds of scholars. I can just tell you my kind. My kind of scholar is, I define success as something which changes the current way of thinking on something. So if people are thinking that so and so is such and such school of thought, the Wendy Doniger school of thought is great, or the American school of Sanskrit studies is great, and our Sanskrit, our Sanskrit organizations in India giving them recognition and awards and Padma awards and all that, and I want to refute it, then that is scholarship for me, because if I'm successful, I've changed something from what it used to be to what I made it. So changing the discourse from something to something else is what I consider to be scholarship. Now, that is only one kind of scholarship, and particularly I'm interested in making frameworks and not interested in, for example, a translation of something or compiling a lot of facts, historical facts. Those are important scholarship also, but not the kind that I do. So that scholarship, the scholarship has to be done by a proper thinking people, research type of people. Unfortunately, we do not have an ecosystem that encourages scholarship separate from activism, separate from opinions, and we do not have enough peer review or to validate and check out the facts. That also is needed. Otherwise, it's a lot of quackery. It's a lot of people with a lot of credentials and fame. They get involved. They get in. They get invited. They think they're supposed to be invited, whether they have something original to say or not. And another issue is the recycling the same old stuff over and over again rather than original. So we need to encourage original thinking that has an impact, that changes the game, and that is peer reviewed, checked out. That's the scholarship I really think we need. Activism, there is plenty of people who want to be activists and start their channel and give some lectures here and there. I don't think you need to cultivate activism. There is already too much.
You spoke about AI, sir. AI, artificial intelligence. To have our own framework, can we train the algorithm to have an appropriate framework of our young academicians?
Excellent question.
Yeah, please.
To train the algorithm with our framework is a great idea, but not training Google's algorithm. We have to train our algorithm. So it is not OpenAI's GPT. You know, now today they've announced GPT-4. I don't know how many of you know that. GPT-4. There was GPT-3, then there was Chat GPT, now there's GPT-4, which is 1,000 times or 100 times more, capable in terms of its language model, and the number of elements, the number of units is like trillions. So if we are training that, then you are making the owners of that more intelligent. It's like giving intelligence and knowledge to the KGB or the CIA or the ISI, saying that we are making them more intelligent about us. That's a foolish thing to do, right? You don't want them to be smarter about us. So in the same way, making foreign algorithms smarter about us is what they want us to do. They want us to train their algorithms in all the Indian languages, Indian nuances, keep filling them with data. But that is a data mining. We should avoid that. So first we need the basic models made in India, owned by India. This is a project that the big industrialists should do. Rather than funding the Harvard, they should do this in India first.
Sir, my name is Brahmanandam, professor in biochemistry, University of Hyderabad. You have elegantly elaborated and provided, the concept of the framework, and which I think I learned a lot about that. So my question related to that is that if this concept of the framework is ingrained and instilled in our society and every bit and part of our domain, and what is your opinion to on these in developing or adapting a framework for the Indian science to advance? Because you said that the original ideas or thoughts are essential to build a nice society. But on the other hand, the present scenario in the Indian condition is that more of a application-oriented science. So that is probably because we wanted to compete with the China's, Chinese science and technology. So which one is the right way that for the advancement of the science in India?
So if I understand that,
Already introduced.
so if I understand correctly, there is a fundamental research, fundamental scientific discovery.
Basic science.
Yeah, fundamental scientific discovery, and then there's applications, and then there's engineering and technology further than that. Every one of them is important. So I don't think you need one framework that says only this is important and not that important. Because if you look at the cutting edge fundamental research, United States used to lead, and then it would also lead in applied, and then it would also lead in the engineering. What has happened is China first, because of its manufacturing, started taking the lead in engineering applications. They've taken the lead in many engineering applications. Now they've moved into the applied sciences, basic sciences also. And if you look at the number of PhDs and the number of scientific papers being published in fundamental science, basic sciences, China is catching up. So, they are rapidly doing all three levels. And India's problem is we are not, as a society, the percent of GDP invested in R&D is one of the lowest in the world. You know that.
Agreed.
And the industry don't invest a whole lot, government doesn't invest a whole lot. So this is something we paying the price. We're not investing in the research, but then we're licensing the Rafael jet, and we're rapidly all kind of foreign things with huge money we're paying because they have the technology we don't. So if we were to invest in our own technology, then we'll have to you have to do it for 10 years before you get the value. This is the thing. It's not short term. If you invest now for 10 years, huge budget for R&D, you will get the benefit financially because you won't have to keep on buying so many foreign things, and you'll become self-sufficient. And then 10 years after that, you'll be exporting, like China is exporting. So this is a short-term versus long-term trade-off. That is a policy issue.
Right. Thank you.
I also want to say that not only should we invest in the technology itself, but also the infrastructure like journals, indices, things like that support scientific research that we control. China is doing that. They're not depending on international journals anymore. They're not depending on indices for scientific publications. things like that. So those are the support infrastructure also should be simultaneously built.
Sir, good afternoon.
Just want to add one point here. Per dollar spent, India does the best in the world in terms of publication number as well as quality per dollar spent. But per publication published, we do the least in innovation in terms of patenting and other things. So we are very good in publishing things with limited resources, but we are very uninnovative based on the processes that we follow post publications. There's a less flattering way of saying that, if I may be honest. If our output per dollar is huge, but the technological impact is not huge, then it means we are talking a whole lot of stuff that is not necessarily innovative. You're also saying something like that. We're publishing number of papers. You can have Manthan, you can have a Bathak. Everybody will come, give a lot of talks, and you can write the proceedings and say we're publishing a lot. But how innovative is that? How much impact is it? That is the real test. Is are we able to develop useful things that the world needs, that we pioneer, and others will buy from us. India was an export economy because manufacturing economy, not because of cheap labor, but because we had products of a type like metallurgy. Nobody else had the zinc technology, for example. We had products of a type and quality, quantity that nobody else could match. So that we have to recover. That sort of thinking.
Sir, good afternoon. This is Professor Tippaswamy from Bengaluru. Sir, my question is related to we are in the era of Chat GPT, where when it comes to research and the outcomes, so the development of efficient and effective tool, which is very much accurate with respect to the summarization, conclusion, etc., which is available on social media. So, with respect to this IKS, Indian Knowledge System, the opinion, so will it not lead to conflict and contraventions, etc.?
So are you saying use Chat GPT to create Indian knowledge system? Is that the point?
Yeah, if Indian Chat GPT summarizes the opinion over the web and it will come out with its own version. So that particular version, authenticity and legitimacy, because people go with the same. So how to...
Yeah, if you use Chat GPT to come up with Indian knowledge systems, there are two errors. One is that you are enriching the algorithm of Chat GPT, which any day they can turn off. They can switch it off, and you don't have it anymore because it's somebody else's technology. Second thing is that you are summarizing what's already there, and if it's biased, you're summarizing bias.
Yes.
So if you're summarizing swastik, like I said in the morning, that swastik is a biased view that they have. So it is that Nazi view of swastik that you are putting into this. So therefore, for all these reasons, we must have our own equivalent of Chat GPT, and then we should do all these things.
Okay. This generalized Chat GPT leads to conflicts because counter version, say for example, IKS, there is positive version. Counter version may be there in social media. In such cases, for the people to neutrality, how to believe which is legitimate, which is accurate, which is correct, and all those things, will it not be leading to chaos?
So if you control the Chat GPT, India, let's say you have this Dharma GPT, something like that, which is made in India and Indian people own it here. Then you decide how you want to train it, on what knowledge system sources you want to train. That would be a very exciting project. Instead of just digitizing manuscripts, you should make them computer readable, you should make them searchable, and you should use Indian manuscripts to train our GPT. That is what you should do. You should have a GPT which can also learn Sanskrit and Devanagari and understand Sanskrit grammar and use that as the data for learning knowledge. Then you will have a Shastra compliant GPT. We should build something like that.
Exactly. Sir, in such case, yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Next one.
Hello, sir. Namaskaram. Myself, Dr. Ashok Kumar from Central University of Kerala, Assistant Professor. Sir, my question is, every day we can see there are some fake narratives are generated and propagated. For that fake narratives, the literature is accumulated every day. And today, fake narrative, after 3-4 years, it will become a truth for whoever reading that content. So how to encounter from the pro-nationalistic views? I guess.
So this is where the people, like for example, how does Google control the AI learning of narratives? There are humans at the top that label the outcomes based on their human value judgment. And so at the top, there have to be people who are calibrating what values you like. And the AI system has to then, based on that, learn in compliance with that. So there are, think of it like in science, you have boundary conditions. So you're solving a problem with boundary conditions. You give a boundary condition that says that whatever learning you have cannot violate this particular Shastra, for example. And so if it is accumulated knowledge, you check it with that. And if it doesn't comply, it has to be rejected. So this is kind of a reinforced learning. You reinforce with feedback, positive feedback, negative feedback. So you need a standard of absolute truth that you believe in. And therefore, against that, the learning happens. And we should take our Shastra as our standard.
Thank you, sir.
नमस्ते राजीव जी, मैं डॉक्टर दयानंद आर्य, शासकीय स्नातक महाविद्यालय कुकटपल्ली से हूँ। स्वावलंबन, आत्मनिर्भरता एवं टिकाऊ विकास के लिए भारतीय शिक्षण प्रणालियाँ, उनका क्या योगदान हो सकता है लक्ष्य 2047 के लिए? इस विषय पर चर्चा के लिए हम यहाँ एकत्रित हुए हैं। आपने बहुत अच्छे ढंग से इस बात पर प्रकाश डाला है कि किस तरह से फ्रेमवर्क्स, मतलब भारतीय शिक्षण प्रणालियों को नाश करने के लिए किस किस प्रकार की विचारधाराएं काम कर रही हैं। तो मेरा प्रश्न ये है कि जिन लोगों ने भारतीय शिक्षण प्रणालियों को समूल नाश करने का प्रयास किया है, ऐसे लोगों की भाषा का प्रयोग करके हम पुनः अपने भारतीय जो ज्ञान व्यवस्थाएं हैं उनकी पुनः स्थापना कैसे कर सकते हैं? क्योंकि जो व्यक्ति गुलगुले खाता है वो ये नहीं कह सकता कि मैं गुड़ बिना खाए ही गुलगुले खाता हूँ। ठीक है।
As the expert on education, you want to comment on that?
I think, I'm sorry, I'll speak in English. My Hindi is not so good. But I think starting Indic knowledge systems, integrating them in early education would be a good idea. I think we can really do it. I've done it personally for the 2 kids that I've educated, and I'm doing it for other children also. You can use, for example, Ganita Shastram, which is not Vedic mathematics, but Ganita Shastram, like Pinglacharya's, Ganita Shastram, we can include that within early education. Leelavati of Bhaskaracharya, there are beautiful ideas over there in terms of encryption, with Bhuta Sankhya, things, and Katapayadi system. All that can be started off at a very young age. The new education policy is not doing all of that. In fact, it doesn't even have vernacular, textbooks. So I think you can integrate Ganita Shastram with modern mathematics, for example, and that makes a richer curriculum and a rigorous curriculum.
So basically start with children, and then the problem will not be there, because some of the problem with NEP and everything is even the quota system in college is that we're not helping children when they start learning, and then suddenly in college we want to fix all the problems and all the inequalities and things of that sort, and that creates tension. So her specialty is early childhood education in the Vedic system using Sanskrit as a language. That she's done very well. She's used Sanskrit as the madhyam of education. She's done that with her own children at home who've become very brilliant. So this is a very good case study she has.
Good afternoon all. Myself, Dr. G. Balaji, Assistant Professor, working at on contractual basis from Central University of Karnataka. Sir, as Honorable Vice Chancellor Sir Vijay also said about innovativeness and patent right. If you think and if you compare our Indian universities with the foreign universities, at the end of the year, the most of the foreign universities, they are getting most of the patent rights from the normal universities like the central universities and the state universities as we are maintaining. So why not such an innovativeness and such an patent rights we are not getting and expecting from the universities like we are maintaining. So to get such an innovativeness and the patent rights from our state universities and the central universities, how you can suggest us on this academicians, young academicians conclave to get to register a more patent rights at the end of the year like foreign universities? Thank you so much.
So, to be honest, I don't know enough about how the state universities work and what is the difference between national and state. So maybe you could comment why national and state are different. What is it? Policy? What is it the reason?
Firstly, I will make a statement that India has a lot of very bright minds in multiple areas. Indian researchers are fairly bright. They are very capable people. We do not have enough in number to the size of the country. That's number one. Number two, our people who are intellectually very strong somehow are not inclined towards, I should patent it, I should make money out of it. All our upbringing is knowledge is for knowledge's sake. That is our upbringing. That's there in our DNA, that you do it for the sake of understanding the universe kind of thing. So very little in us pushes towards making money out of our processes. This we have to change now. So we have to inculcate in our education system that we can actually convert our knowledge into wealth. We should do it at a large scale. Then there is patentable material in our publications, but we don't end up patenting. It is just the mindset problem that has to change. And people who are good and young and innovative, they're not very confident somehow. That confidence level also we have to boost up in our entire ecosystem. So there are few things that we need to tweak. Scaling up also is a very important thing. We need to scale up our processes. That requires fair amount of resource allocation in the system, which our system is not doing. Neither the government is doing, nor the private players are coming in. So we are resource limited, and some amount of tweaking we need to do here and there, and we will be there.
Namaskar, sir. My name is Dr. A. Srinivas, Associate Professor of English, Government Degree College, Adilabad. My question is, whenever we talk about Indian knowledge systems, we readily fall back on, or we go back to our the glory of the ancient India. So my question is, don't we have anything real, solid, innovative knowledge in the present day from India? And another question is, if we have, because youngsters readily identify with the foreign, Western, European models or technology. So how to, if we have real knowledge in the present from India, how to make it more attractive to the youngsters?
Okay, I'll give you one example that I'm very familiar with, that is Ayurveda. Ayurveda as a knowledge system, probably the most cutting edge research is going on in Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston and Harvard University. I've spent several days there. I've made actually some video records I've made. I haven't published them yet on the kind of research they're doing. They're measuring the effects of Ayurvedic treatment and yoga and various kinds of things on the genetics, on the epigenetics, not the DNA, but the epigenetics, in order, and using artificial intelligence to kind of figure out what are the effects or deep effects in the cell of using these Indian techniques. I don't know of any Indian organization going that deep into it, and they are developing patents. So now the thing is, here is an example of something very modern. It is not some old, Pushpak Viman idea kind of that. I've always said I want to take a ride on a Pushpak Viman, get me a ticket, and I'd love to have a ride. Until I can see some evidence. It's good text, good imagination, but it cannot be considered scientific, empirically proven until there is some evidence for it. But things like metallurgy, we have physical evidence. Things like Ayurveda, we have physical evidence. And there's so much market for this. Healing health industry is one of the biggest industries in the world. So why are we letting others take the lead in the research aspects of Ayurveda and not our own people? That's a question that our policy makers have to answer.
Also want to say that when I mentioned Ganita Shastram, in fact, the latest pedagogy of in mathematics in California, if you see the disaster, children are not, doing in standardized tests, they're really failing. But if you look at, say, Ganita Shastra, you have 8 methods for multiplication compared to the 1 method provided in the Western system. 4 methods of addition. Yeah, just that one text of Leelavati. So by the time you're done with this, right, you have a very good idea of how numbers work. And not only that, you're decrypting and encrypting all the time. You're reading beautiful shlokas and chandas. So it's a very rich system in terms of content and pedagogy, right? So we are looking to Indian knowledge systems not out of nostalgia, but out of relevance.
So, Lakshmanji, we have till 2:30, so we have 4 more minutes. So we'll continue. Few more questions. Few more questions we can take. Okay, then okay, fine. Sure.
Greeting to all.
Question you to come there.
Sir, greeting to all. Yeah, myself, Dr. Parvatalu, Assistant Professor of Physics from City College. I have a quick question, sir, related to the STEM education. For that, actually, I mean, I did my PhD postdoc from USA. Like the system I have studied over there, they have been focusing a lot on STEM education in USA, like which could actually, learn by doing or activity-based learning. Whereas in India, what I have observed, like the students are coming without any ideas. Like they've been choosing the physics, chemistry, mathematics, whatever, just like some external force. Like maybe it could be father or relative, whatever. They're not coming with a passion to do research. They're doing compulsory, like So what I have a question is there any way, like could we focus a lot on the STEM education in the school level or college level so that the student can choose or explore in the STEM education side, which could help a lot in research. Like as one of our friends mentioned that we're not getting patents because of that. I was thinking the patents actually definitely it's a creativity. I mean, whereas in USA, what I have studied in one of the article, in the 12,000 articles, they've been getting patents 4,000, which is like a very huge number. Whereas in India, it's like out of 4,000 publications, 100 patents. The ratio is like very less. So, what is your comment on STEM education as well as this, the creativity in the research side? Thank you.
It's a two-part answer. First, STEM education in the US. The US elementary, middle, and high school education is a disaster. And the undergrad education in the US, even in STEM subjects, is sort of mediocre because the admission process is not based on merit. Undergraduate programs, they are the cash cow. So essentially, you get in students and you milk them for the undergraduate education. So that's what keeps the university tennis courts and swimming pools running. Now, what is interesting is the graduate school programs in STEM education. If you look at the percentage of graduate school students, 80% of them are from overseas, Eastern European, Russian, Chinese, Indian. And those are the students that A, they are cheap labor to do research. B, they are the top, they're cream of the crop in all these different countries. And they help them establish, their ranking. So the US has a split system. The undergraduate education is based on quotas of different kinds, although they won't admit it. But the graduate school is where the pay patterns are being found by poaching the best scientists and researchers from different countries. So there is a difference there. The other part is in India, we do not have rigor. See, the early education in the classical educationists, even in America, they divided it up into 3 parts, which is not the mainstream. They say the early part is a grammar phase where you do a lot of kantastikaranam. Good poetry you learn by heart. You don't go off and write your own haiku poem in second grade. You commit to memory 1,000 great poems, right? You commit. I mean, the learning by rote has a bad name, but it depends on what you're committing to memory. Because that's what the child can do. It repeats like a parrot. But the middle, in the logic phase, in the middle school years, you learn logic and reasoning. And in the high school phase, which is the rhetoric phase, you can learn about argumentation and, holding your own argument and debating and things like that. I think those sorts of classical systems, right, which were actually taken from India, went to Greece and then the Europeans adopted it. Those have to be brought back and made rigorous. And Sanskrit knowledge systems in Sanskrit have very tight definitions and precise thinking, and they help children think in these kinds of ways. Very, very precise thinking. So I think if we bring back Vyakaranam, Ganitam, things like that, you will actually learn to think in a very sharp, astute way.
Next question. Yes, have a question.
Hello. I'm Dr. Rakesh from Symbiosis, Pune. Can you hear me? Yeah, I'm Dr. Rakesh from Symbiosis, Pune. I have a general question. One might have covered it in the last session, but I just want to run it off again. Like when we are talking about Indian knowledge system, I'm also thinking in terms of discipline, right? So are we talking at a foundational level in which we are trying to bring in a new methodology, or are we just trying to work around with just sources in terms of having some Indian sources or a non-Western sources, and still we'll be working with the philosophical foundations which are rooted elsewhere? I mean,
So you can have both content that was Indian, that is Indian knowledge, you can have framework or methodology which is Indian, that is a deeper knowledge. I prefer the latter.
yeah, so then one gets into the other concern, if I may be allowed to elaborate a bit, would be then thinking in terms of discipline, then once we are going to move beyond what is consensually agreed as what ought to be or what should be the disciplinary framework, and then when we are going for and select an Indian, epistemologically we are going into different tools, then what happens to the status of disciplines? Because now we are into some kind of a transdisciplinary space, right? Then at one level, we are going much more than a global south attack on some epistemological apartheid or any of those things. So at the end of the day, would an Indian knowledge system, like, would it lead to the collapse of the disciplines as we understand, or are we moving into some kind of a new epistemic realm?
So my proposal is that Indian knowledge systems do not replace non-Indian knowledge systems, they supplement. We expand. We still need people who understand Newtonian science and Western approach to knowledge and whatnot, but we should supplement it, expand our knowledge by bringing in what is unique about us. So it is not an exclusivity. It is not that this has to replace that. You can have conflicting knowledge systems, competing knowledge systems, and that's a good thing to have.
In the knowledge domain, there are no divisions. Because ultimately, knowledge is to understand within you and outside you. So divisions are made by our conveniences. So certainly when we create our own knowledge domain through Indian knowledge system or whatever, it adds on to the knowledge cloud. There are really no bifurcations.
Quickly, you will not believe that the University of Virginia Medical School, the neuroscience department, has a little division called perceptual investigations in perceptual science, and this is nothing but they're studying reincarnation. So this is something that we've known, but the West is taking it seriously and studying it. So like Professor said, it is just adding to the body of knowledge, which we haven't done. We've known it all along, but we haven't taken it, upgraded ourselves, made it modern and relevant. But if it goes there and comes back, then we probably will accept it.
So good evening, sir. I am Dr. G. Nirupa. I am principal of Social Welfare Residential Degree College. And I first of all thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak to you people in front of you. And now I have got a small thing, sir. So we have been talking about Indian knowledge and Indian culture and all. So in this era of globalization, colonization, also we were talking about wokeism, where there is a threat to the freedom of speech also. So at this particular scenario, to bring back our old glory of Indian knowledge system into the education and all that, what are the specific initiatives that are supposed to be taken? And in the meanwhile, during this course of time, if at all there is any obstacles and all, how to face them, and what should be the proper initiative that should be taken so that the system is going to be taken up from the primary, as we were discussing also. It should start from the primary level, and then slowly it has to reach the universities and all those things. So what should be the challenges and how to face them? That is the main question.
I think Sanskrit as a medium of education is very important. It A, unifies India, but B, it gives you access to the Indic knowledge systems. Most of the Indic knowledge systems are either studied in English or using translations, which basically defeats the purpose. So I think every child should be taught Sanskrit Vyakaranam, Amarakosha, Ashtadhyayi, things like that, because they are rigorous sciences. They are not anything, there's nothing to do with religion. So I think we should just take a bold step and do it. B, we should have accreditation for schools that do this. You perhaps if people do not want to participate in this kind of schooling, they can go back to the CBSE. But we need a rigorous accreditation board for Sanskrit-based Indic knowledge systems, which produces, and the goal is not to produce just the traditional acharyas, which is also important, but the goal is to produce kids that can traverse both worlds, that can straddle both worlds, because we need youngsters who know the civilizational ethos as well as Western sciences, and those are the kids that can be tomorrow's leaders.
So you want
Yeah, I think this is a very important question, very practical question. I don't think we are really formalized in particular initiatives yet. I think we are just beginning to explore what is there in the Indian knowledge system that is useful for us and for the global community. I think that exercise has begun. If I were to begin taking initiatives, I think there are certain things one should do. For example, in primary school level, as Madam said, secondary school, high school level, we need to bring in our content in a manner that is palatable and in a manner that actually adds value to what they are already learning. Those things can be done if we can systematize our content and put it as a complementary strength to whatever we are already having. So certain things can be done, but then the real issue is whatever claims we claim, can we provide some basis for it at a higher level? That is, of course, the real problem. At a basic level, grounds up, we should be able to add a lot more content through our knowledge heritage system. It's possible. We just have to begin to do it.
I want to tell you, see, I haven't waited for the government to come up with textbooks, curriculum, all of that. So people who can do it should do it. I also have started a school where I'm teaching other people to do this, where we develop the curriculum, we train the teachers. So we create the entire ecosystem. You create a marketplace where you're training parents to say, hey, this is good for you, good for your kids. They can be really smart. Then you train the teachers and you build the curriculum. So it's a lot of work. But you can't wait for the government or some messiah to come and save you. You just have to take, each of us has to take the initiative to do something. And I think if you really think and look around, you'll find resources if you want to do it. But it takes a lot of hard work and tapasya.
Can we have one more question only? Just one last question.
Sir.
Yeah. Okay. One last question.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Speaker from Nationalist Hub. Sir, from morning I have been listening to you. You gave us a great knowledge that how we are being attacked by Westerns or their ideology or their framework and all. My basic and fundamental question is how to give it back to them in the same way they are doing to us.
So basically, get the book called 10 Heads of Ravan that is available here, which is produced by young, scholars that we are mentoring who are giving it back. That's an example of how to give it back. You will see, read the introduction which I wrote, then read the chapters, each one head of Ravan, how we are giving it back. If that is what you mean, then you give a good example of how to do that. And the books we are writing are all ways of giving back. Every one of them is actually a response, rejoinder, response, a rebuttal to the prevailing dogmatic or dominant narrative, giving a response from our point of view. So that's what we are doing, and we invite you to take a look at it, consider it, and then get back to us with your comment. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I think we would like to leave because we have another engagement. We have to go back to the hotel, get rewired, reset, reprogrammed, and then go for another event. Thank you, everybody. I really enjoyed this, and thank you to the organizers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the dignitaries on the dais for taking up such a wide range of questions, touching upon many areas. Now I call upon Professor. Now I call upon Professor Chaitanya, sir, from Central University of Karnataka, to present a vote of thanks.
A very good afternoon to all of you. It's my privilege to thank the dignitaries on the dais. Thanks for taking this rapid round of questions, sir. Since it has to be brief, I'll just point out 3 points that you have explained the modus operandi of divisive forces via their framework, and you have emphasized on the need of INDIC framework, and then what finally the take-home message you have given, sir, is that to counter the breaking India forces, you have to understand them to make a better India, and to remove the snakes of Ganga so that the flowers of nationalism can bloom, and to defeat the 10 heads of Ravana so that with intellectuality and rationally to win over and reclaim the title of Vishwaguru. Thanks to all the dignitaries on the dais.
So one small request, sir. All the organizers want to have a photograph with you people. Please, organizers, to come here.
The next session will be the panel discussion. I request all the delegates to be seated and take part in the discussion. I request Dr. Sridevi, Associate Professor, Department of Biotechnology from Central Tribal University of Andhra